Word up, parents. Welcome to Towns Talks podcast, keeping shit real. My name's Jessie and I'm going to be your host. Let's get into this. So, if you are listening to this, it's highly likely that this is the second time I've recorded this because after boasting about it on YouTube and boasting about it on my Instagram, I accidentally deleted half the audio from the first podcast I recorded yesterday. I mean, this shit's wild, but we live and learn. I won't be doing this again anytime soon, fiddling around and doing little edits. I will always try and record it, I think, in one fail swoop hit because your girl doesn't have the time for this. So, welcome. Why are we here? What we doing? What go Jess, I hear you say. For those of you that follow me on Instagram or have found me via Threads, whichever way that you found me, I am mum to 3 children. I have a 16-year-old neurotypical son and I have 7, soon to be 8-year-old twin boys. Both have ADHD and the younger one of the twins has ASD and a PDA profile. That's what kind of brought me to Instagram in the first place, was the lack of knowledge or the lack of awareness generally that I was finding across the whole of the UK, if not the world, about pathologically demand avoidant children. And here we are a year later, just under 30,000 followers. And it has been an absolutely mind-blowing journey, suddenly realizing that, guess what? I'm not the only person that's got a child with PDA. There is a lot of us out there, diagnosed or undiagnosed. But anyway, I'm waffling on now. I wanted this first episode to really be about familiarization. And if you're listening to this and you've got a child with any sort of spectrum disorder, about one of the biggest struggles, I think, for every parent that I speak to that's got a neurodivergent child is the unwavered trust that you have to put into complete and utter strangers. So when I say putting in unwavered trust, you'll get what I mean. Do you know what I mean? It is one of those, isn't it? You have to put your trust in all these types of people. You have to trust that they're going to fight for your child. You have to trust that they've got your child's best intentions at heart. And really, it just leaves you feeling like your whole life and your child's life is completely out of control. And I know that that's something that I really struggled with for a very, very long time, and actually still do, is, has this person got the best intentions for my child? And is this person going to do everything that they possibly can to ensure that my child is made to feel that they have a chance in life, that they are supported, and that also that they feel that they are not alone in their own journey? I want to start up, I think, by let's talk about the mainstream schooling system, or schooling systems, and local authorities is probably going to be a better place to start. So my experiences of having to put trust in people really started at the back end of nursery when the twins were sort of in the preschool room, and there'd been quite a few red flags. I'm not going to go into it. There'd been quite a few red flags at nursery. And when we were choosing our mainstream primary school place, our local authority wanted to come and observe my son Maxie, and they came, and I put my faith in them, and they said, yeah, it'll be absolutely fine, don't worry, he's just maybe just a little bit bored. And that's exactly what happened. So we put our trust in them, first foot undone, and off we went. The biggest issues really started when we encountered mainstream primary school. So we've obviously been through mainstream education before with our eldest son, but within about 8 weeks of starting school, it was all going tits up. It was really stressful. He was already not sitting in the classroom. He just couldn't regulate himself. He was getting aggressive, physically violent, throwing things. And the Senko at the school, who was amazing, sort of said, I think maybe we need to have sort of an intervention with ELSA, so the early learning team. And they came and visited us, and they were all very, very, he'll be okay. Maybe we can just do some stuff that will try and sort of release some pressure for him, so that we can try and make his attendance at school much better, but also so that he could, still continue at mainstream school. Well, at that point, we had absolutely no inkling that there was going to be anything wrong and that there'd be no potential sort of not being able to attend mainstream school. So what happened then, we tried some strategies, it didn't work. And then we started the footprint for getting an EHCP, so the care plan, which for us actually was pretty straightforward. We had an online educational psychologist appointment. They went and saw him at school, an occupational therapist, but all the time the behaviour was just sort of getting worse and worse at school. And again, you put your trust in these people. And we were like, oh yeah, our local authority is going to do the best that they can to kind of support us. And it's when we got the EHCP and they sort of said, oh, he'll be absolutely fine in mainstream school, but with maybe what's the word? A ASD unit. At this point also, it's worth mentioning that he did have a TA that was with him for 4 hours a day. But at that point, by the time the EHCP was issued come April, so after Easter, of reception, it was already, the cracks were already really starting to show. He was not really going to school very often. He was on half days from after Christmas, and then which slowly got whittled down. Our biggest struggles really in putting trust in people really came with Maxie they asked us if we would like Maxie to go into a PRU, so pupil referral unit for a term. And we kind of were like, oh my God, this has just come out of nowhere. What's going to happen? And I said, what it does is it allows the child to sort of decompress, have a bit of a time away from the mainstream school environment. But also what it does is it gives the PRU time to work with him, to think of strategies that they can then, when he goes back to school, sort of to implement with mainstream school. So he went to the PRU for a whole term. And I'm not joking, within about 2 weeks, he was a model student. He absolutely loved it. There was only 6 kids. He'd never been out of our sight before. And now he was going in a car and a taxi every single morning, 5 days a week, to a school that was about 10 miles away. So it was a really big upheaval for him. And we just kind of thought, oh, this will be it. They'll be able to give him the skills and the strategies to be able to go back to mainstream school. He went back to mainstream school, and it was absolute carnage. But it highlighted to us, and after speaking to the headmistress at the PRU, that he wouldn't be able to survive in mainstream. And that was very clearly written on all the documentation. So we kept on submitting it. We had meeting after meeting with our case officer. And, we were trusting them to do to fight our corner, really. But the other thing that really blows my mind is when you have a child who needs to, who's currently in the mainstream system, but it's the wrong environment and they can't settle because of obviously their needs. It's the fact that they're just like, oh, well, they can just carry on until you find one. So we started looking at quite a lot of schools, all ASD ones, but again, nobody wanted to take him because he had PDA. And as soon as they caught wind of a PDA profile, they're just like, nah, not on my watch. The challenge with PDA children is that it's basically child-led learning or trauma-informed learning. And actually quite a lot of even specialist schools just can't commit to doing it because, the mix of needs are so different between all the children. But one thing that we always kind of thought was pretty mind-blowing was that, did you know that case officers have about 200 children that they look after on top of allocated schools? So the system isn't fit for purpose in any way, shape or form. Like, how can you tell me that a caseworker can do their job effectively when they're looking after that many children? They can't. It's absolute bollocks. And it's funny because you're trying to get hold of people, like nobody answers your email, the local authority just talking absolute fucking riddles. I think they make it that difficult as a diversionary tactic. So you just think, nah, sod this. I actually can't be bothered. I'm just going to waste away and let my child just sit at home or just get, permanently excluded from school. And I don't quite know what I thought the local authority would do. I don't know what my understanding of it was, quite minimal until that point, that actually that you needed to, I thought we'd get sort of guidance and help with finding a specialist school. Absolutely not. You're just told, look on the local authority's website, ring up, find a school, go and visit it, and then we'll try and get you in there. But, the panel, talking about putting your faith into people and businesses and sort of public sector sort of departments, I've only just recently found out what the panel's like, and the panel is literally a panel of people from your local authority, like child services, and they spend roughly 5 minutes per child, and it'll just be like, yep, no, 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 and that's it. Your child just gets sort of tossed along, and if they cut it on that day, they cut it, which is really, really sad, because so many children just fall between the cracks, and it's really unfair on parents. It's unfair on children, but it's also unfair on the other children that are in mainstream environment that are, having to be, not the victim of a dysregulated child, but if you are a neurotypical child and a neurodivergent child is having a meltdown and you've never been exposed to that, it is really, really scary. And I never forget our PDA, one of his biggest sort of meltdowns, there was a big fridge in the communal area of infants where they used to keep all the snacks. And he actually nearly managed to push the entire double fridge over. We're talking, he could have killed another child or seriously injured them. So it's not just the safety of my child, it's the safety of other children as well. And that's also something that you then carry, that worry that what if your child hurts or injures somebody else's child? Because I've been there. I've got a neurotypical son, and if he was getting attacked at school, I would want to know answers and what's being done and what's not being done. So you're just putting all your faith in all these people. I've got to say, we were very, very lucky, and are still very lucky, that the Senko at the boys' mainstream school, which is obviously the same school that my neurotypical son went to, are absolutely shit hot. But I am very aware that there are a lot of Senkos that probably shouldn't be in the job that they should be in. And I'm going to say that because, and I'm not dissing, Senkos, but let's be honest, there are people that work in Tesco's that don't even give a shit if you ask them where their milk is, and they don't know where that is. So having people that are responsible for your children, it doesn't matter what industry you're in, there's always going to be people that don't give a shit and don't want to be there. And it's really worrying for parents. The panel, the whole thing, the whole sort of, what's the word? The whole ethos of panel. When people say, oh, it's going to panel, and they're going to spend quality time. They don't. They're just, a collection of paperwork chucked on the table. They have a quick chat. Yep, no. And that's it. They're passed on very, very quickly. We went to panel 3 times, and they just kept on saying, the first time it was, oh, he can survive in mainstream. He can just have some funding. He can have a TA. The second time, they then named a mainstream. They recommended, a mainstream of an ASD unit. But once he'd been in the PRU, it became very apparent then, even though it was so chaotic for way over a year, going to the PRU actually became quite a massive part of how we managed to get him into a specialist school finally. And I'll tell you the reason why. When he went back to mainstream after attending the PRU, literally the wheels came off and it fucking crashed and burned. He was way more explosive, way more violent. He was like in burnout. He was going for about 3 hours a week, but it proved that we had evidence that when he was at the PRU prior to that term previous, he was absolutely a model student. But we then were looking for specialist school. We wanted the panel to name them. We looked at, like I said, I think about 16 or 17 schools, but we then started to look at SDMH schools that had more of a trauma-based teaching approach that were going to be better for him. Most importantly, what was going to maximize his capacity. And at this point, he'd not been at school for his first 2 years. And we found a specialist school. They visited us at mainstream, and he got rejected twice. He got rejected after we took him there, took him there. And then they came, and then we challenged it. The irony was, when we first went, I'm laughing now because I'm not going fucking mental over it. But the irony was that when we first went to go and see the special school that he's currently in, he basically was that the fire alarm went off halfway through the visit. So if you've got a child with PDA, obviously it was utter commotion, and he literally kicked off, and it was chaos. And we were actually only there for about 20 minutes, and that included 10 minutes of being outside waiting for them being evacuated from the fire alarm. So they rejected us. We then challenged it, and I said, no, I don't think that's fair. You need to come back. So they came back to his mainstream school and observed him. And again, he was just having a really bad day. He'd been in a really loud hall. And then when he wasn't doing any learning, he was just basically sitting in the corridor. He's a corridor child, which we are just seeing more and more on the app. These children that are, can't cope in mainstream, and they're just sort of being chucked into corridors to do their learning. And as you know, corridors are busy, corridors are loud. They are not the right environment for any child, let alone a child that's neurodivergent. So they rejected us again. And by this point, I had literally had a fucking enough. And you're just putting all your trust in these people and your faith and hoping that they're going to fight for you. And we were kind of told by a local authority, well, that's it. It's tough. Like, you can't do anything about it. And I just thought, I'm not having this. So I formally complained to our local authority, putting more trust in them again, thinking that they will support us. And the first email came back after I formally complained, and they basically just completely gaslit me. I think the second sentence on the email, on their reply email to my formal complaint, said, have you spoken and discussed this with school yet? And I was just thinking, you are absolutely fucking clueless. You have no idea the stress. So I obviously then wrote another formal complaint, and they never addressed it. And the irony is they never actually replied to my second formal complaint. I mean, how wild's that? These people work for local authorities, didn't actually reply to my second formal complaint. I actually took things into my own hands. I reported my local authority to the local government and social care ombudsman. And I did that a week before it was going back to panel again, and I wanted this specialist school named regardless. I knew deep down that it was the absolute right school for our son. And lo and behold, after I formally campaigned to the local government and social care ombudsman, the following Wednesday at panel, they named a specialist school. And, that's the other thing. Once they name a specialist school, once they physically name a specific school, then the school, even if they've rejected you, they can't challenge it. Well, that's my understanding anyway. So it became, that was I think that was the end of May last year. And the irony is, you think, oh, that's it now. We've reached the hurdle. We've reached the end of it. We've reached the final hurdle. Nope. It took our local authority 6 months to sort out the funding. Again, it was just going backwards and forwards, excuse me. And then it came into the fact that it was the summer holidays. Nobody seems to work at local authorities through the summer holidays, which again is a wild concept. And yeah, he started a year ago. I mean, it's the 2nd of October. He started a year ago on Tuesday. And that's come with challenges also. Put our faith now, our next lot of faith has got to be in his transport. What are they like? And we've had no end of issues with his transport, from fights, being attacked in the back of the car, to driver changes, very short time frames, different driver one day to another different driver. And the reality is, our local authority, it's not, I think, again, I had this preconception that it would be the same driver. They'd go on a little yellow bus or a little green bus, and they'd get picked up every day, and it'll be all nice. It's not that. It's just subcontracted out to a third party, and that's the reality. So again, you're putting your faith in people to be able to drive your child safely to school, and are they not going to drive erratic? For my son, he goes to school 20 miles away. So he's in the car sometimes for 2.5 hours, and you're putting your faith in these people. And it is absolutely mind blowing. But I will say the school that he's in are absolutely amazing, and it has totally changed his life. But isn't it a wild concept that you have to do so much fighting, and there's no other sort of event or circumstance where you would solely rely on someone to fight your corner that doesn't know you. It's the wildest of concepts in my brain. I can't quite get over it. And you've got all the other challenges that come with having neurodivergent children. Applying for DLA, again, I hear from a lot of parents, it's just luck of the draw. So if somebody picks up that application pack, you might get a flat out yes, or you might get an instant refusal. And you're having to trust people to make a non-biased judgment call on your child, or that they actually believe that, your child deserves to have an education that that they are legally entitled to. It's just so bonkers to me. And I find the whole concept of having to trust people, and I think maybe I struggle with that with my own ADHD, is the fact that something that is so important and you are so passionate about is absolutely out of your control. You put in your faith in humanity, your humanity. I can't get the word out. Humanitarian, heart of somebody else that you've got absolutely no idea of who they are and if they're going to do the right thing for you or your family. It is just absolutely mind blowing. One more final thing that I wanted to say is it is really difficult to be able to function and get on and have a normal family life when all this is going on, because it is so time consuming. It absolutely will take over your life. I know that for 18 months, my whole life revolved around making sure that these emails had been collected, that had been sent, that I was collecting evidence, that I was documenting everything. I was writing email after email. I was chasing people. I was speaking to Senko. I was looking at specialist schools. I was driving halfway around the county looking at schools. And also having such a long periods of time off work. I counted it all out last year, and we are about £16,000 out of pocket from the fact that my son was not in the right education environment. And who refunds us that? Who pays me back? Who pays my husband back? Who's going to give me back all the copious days of annual leave that I had to take because my son couldn't go to school? And I just find it really, really sad that there are parents out there that won't have the fight in them. They don't have any trust in people, and they maybe don't know how to do all these sort of complaints and, grammatical writing that you have to do. And it's just so beyond draining, and it's just so unfair that you have to do this just to get your child the education that, let's be honest, they are fucking legally entitled to. But anyway, I've gone off on one, haven't I? Talking more about education, but it's just about having to put your faith and trust in people that don't know you from Adam. Right, that is the end of the first podcast, which is actually the second recorded one. So if you listen to this, I couldn't get the audio back, so welcome. I am starting, I have started the book for the Shelf Help Book Club, which is all books to do with parents for neurodivergent children, where we're going to take actionable steps, read them together. You don't even need to read it. I'm going to do 2 private podcasts per week where I will break down the week per chapters that have been read, and we'll take small actionable steps so that we can become more educated, better parents, and that we can, problem shared is problem halved. The first book I'm doing is obviously going to be a PDA book, and it is Understanding Pathological Demand Avoidance Syndrome in Children. Now, I read this book very, very early on in my parenting journey to a PDA, and I just think, like any book, if something's really good, it's always worth going back to revisit. So I'm going to put the book and the link in the show notes, and if you want to join the Shelf Help Book Club, I'm going to put the link in there. It's going to be £7 a month. You can cancel at any time, but come and join us. Anyway, thanks for listening. Take care. Bye.